follow on me. We're marching out into the night. Follow on me. We're standing up against a giant. Follow on me. We might be walking in the fire, but if it's where we're meant to be, then on me.
Okay, folks, it is 15:13 military time, and we chose that because John 15:13 says, "Greater love has no one than this, than to lay down their life for their friends." And that's what Mark, my son, and so many others have done for the freedoms that we enjoy each and every day. And obviously, August 2nd, 2006 was a day that forever changed my life when we were notified that Mark had been killed in action, becoming the first Navy SEAL that we lost in Iraq. And I often say that while I had no choice, the news that was given to me that day, I did have a choice how I responded. And my choice was to put on his boots and pick up his weapon and stay in the fight for every man and woman that served, stay in the fight for every other family that's lost a loved one. And it's been my honor to do that in America's Mighty Warriors. And as we tried to figure in the midst of coronavirus and so many things changing, what could we do? How can we continue to support our veterans when we can't be near them? And so we came up with the On Me. And as I said before, that was probably Mark's final words to his teammates as he got ready to go up the stairs that final time. And as he said, "On me," which meant he was taking the lead and he wanted his teammates to follow. He needed help to be able to complete that mission. And today, as I was preparing for that, that was not on purpose, but as I look at it, and on me when I made that choice to put on Mark's boots and stay in the fight for our veterans. And this is our gift back to you today. As Mark talked about doing more random acts of kindness, how we could change our world. This is our random act of kindness to you today to be able to do these for you at no cost. And we're so grateful for all of our guest speakers who have donated their time. These men and women, get paid to professionally speak to you at an event. And so we're so grateful, General MacFarland. Thank you so much for your generosity and giving back so we can do this and do the On Me. As I prepared again today, though, I thought of how stretched I have been out of my comfort zone and doing things that I never, ever would have guessed that I would do. And I look back, that strength comes from Christ. And as he laid there on the cross, there is no better example of On Me than when he hung there and he said, "Give me all of your sins. They can be on me and I'll provide that sacrifice so you don't have to pay that penalty." And General MacFarland, we're excited to have you here today. I've been blessed to know you and your wife and have your friendship and support. And I just love you guys and what you represent. So we're excited to have you here today. And I'd like to read your official bio because it is quite impressive. And I know I wouldn't remember all of this. Lieutenant General Sean MacFarland retired from the Army in 2018 and joined General Atomics Electromagnetic Systems Group as Vice President for Weapons Programs. In addition to serving as a senior fellow at the Association of the U.S. Army's Institute for Land Warfare, he is a non-resident senior fellow of the Belfer Center for Science and International Affairs at Harvard University. During the course of his military career, Lieutenant General retired MacFarland served in armor and cavalry units at every echelon. He led an armored cavalry platoon at Fort Bliss, Texas. He commanded an armed cavalry troop in Fulda Gap in Germany, an armored battalion in Germany and the Balkans, an armored brigade combat team in Germany and Iraq, the 1st Armored Division at Fort Bliss, and the 3rd Armored Corps in Iraq and at Fort Hood, Texas. He also served as commanding general of JTF North in support of U.S. border security at Fort Bliss. He was deputy commanding general of U.S. forces in Afghanistan and deputy commanding general / chief of staff for U.S. Army Training and Doctrine Command. As a brigade combat team commander in Ramadi, Iraq, he is credited with fostering the Sunni Arab awakening, which was instrumental in turning the tide of the war. While commanding the 3rd Corps, he also commanded all coalition forces in the war against ISIS in Iraq and Syria from 2015 to 2016, during which time coalition forces seized the initiative, recaptured nearly half of the enemy's territory, and set the conditions for the enemy's final defeat. He is a 1981 graduate of the United States Military Academy, the Command and General Staff College, the School of Advanced Military Studies, and the Industrial College of the Armed Forces Eisenhower School. He also earned a Master of Science degree in Aerospace Engineering at Georgia Tech. His decorations include the Combat Action Badge, Parachutist in Air Assault Wings, the Defense Distinguished Service Medal, 3 Army Distinguished Service Medals, and 22 other medals for his achievements in peace and war. In 2016, Time magazine listed him as one of the 100 most influential people in the world. General MacFarland, we are so blessed and honored to have you with us today. Thank you so much for being here.
Well, thanks, Debbie, and it's my honor to be with you. I have to say that I'd do anything for any of our Gold Star parents and our family members, but especially Debbie, for those who made the ultimate sacrifice under my command, as your son did, Mark. And of all the things that you said there, probably the highest accolade anybody could give me would be to say that I had the opportunity to command and to lead soldiers, sailors, airmen, and Marines like Mark in battle. They were an inspiration every day. We wouldn't have accomplished what we did, obviously, without their courage, their skill, and their sacrifice. So thank you for giving your son to me. And it's one of my greatest regrets that I couldn't give him back to you. But I'm proud to do this as a small way of making up for that.
Well, and I talk with Leif Babin often. He was our first guest that we had on. I thought that was very appropriate that was our very first one. But he talks about the survivor's guilt, and I'll say the same thing to you that I've said to Leif over time, many times. There was someone bigger than you, than me, than Leif, than Jocko, than any of his teammates that was in control that day. God did not cause Mark's death. It was the evil terrorists in this world, but he could have stopped it. And, his ways are not our ways. And I see today that the lives, as I said earlier, we've had every day someone from another continent across the world that's tuning in. Mark probably would not have had that impact if he was still alive. Yes, selfishly, I'd rather have him back in a heartbeat. But to see the influence that young man still has almost 14 years later, to see the lives that are being changed, God knew what he was doing when he allowed Mark to come home. Mark was a believer. He's in heaven. That's why I tell everybody, he was redeployed to heaven. He had a new mission. And I will see him again one day. But I hear your heart, and I appreciate that as a general, you were not so far removed. You weren't a general in command at the time, but you weren't so far removed as an officer that wasn't important to you, and not just one of those written missions. This is what it should be, but your heart shows that. And so thank you, sir, for that. I appreciate that very much. Would you like to share a little bit where you grew up, your family, how many children? I know there's some grandchildren.
Yeah. So thanks. Just a little bit about me, more than you've already said, which is I always am a little embarrassed when people read my biography, because it's sort of an out-of-body experience when somebody does that for you. But no, I grew up in a large Irish Catholic family in the Northeast, and was the oldest of 6 kids, and in upstate New York, and went into the military academy, and here I am many years later. Did a long pull in uniform, and since Saddam invaded Kuwait in 1990, spent a good part of the last 25 years of my career in and out of the Middle East, right? So my family, any thing you could say nice about them, the credit goes to my wife, my wife Linda, who largely raised our 2 kids while I was off doing all the things that you listed in my CV. My daughter now is married to an Army officer at Fort Leavenworth. He just pinned on Major. They have 3 kids, 2 girls and a boy. And being a grandparent has been terrific. My son is a company commander at Fort Riley. Both he and my son-in-law and my daughter-in-law have all deployed to combat. My daughter-in-law, Danielle, my son Philip, my daughter-in-law, Danielle, were company commanders together in the same brigade up until about a week ago. She just gave up command. And now she's focused on having our 4th grandchild, should be a little boy. So we'll have 2 granddaughters and 2 grandsons. And we're looking forward to them moving this summer to California to the National Training Center, be close to us.
That's awesome.
So that's the MacFarland family in a nutshell.
Well, I love the MacFarland family. I haven't had a chance to meet your kids yet. I'm sure I will one day, but that's exciting that they're going to be close to you. I know that's been hard having them on the opposite coast, but and your wife, amazing lady. I love her to pieces. And again, I'm very blessed to have your friendship and your support. But as you know, we thought through again, the COVID-19 and the issues that everybody's facing, I wanted to be able to provide some encouragement. And you have seen lots of battle. And I think, we are in a battle. It's a little different battle than what's on the combat fields, but nonetheless, there are people that are fighting for their lives with the virus. There are people that are fighting to keep their businesses alive. There's people that are fighting to figure out how they're going to, feed their children the next week. And we wanted to be able to provide some encouragement for them. We wanted to let these folks know that there's things that, they can be doing and not just to sit and be in fear. So many times I've said, do not focus on those things that you have no control over. You need to focus on the things that you can control. Right. And so that's part of why we put this together. Would you be willing, I think it's important for people to realize, to hear from the different speakers, different things that they've gone through, the difficulties and how they've overcome those. Would you want to share with us maybe one of the toughest things that you've ever had to endure in your life, and then what things you did to overcome that?
Sure. I mean, I like you said, I've been in a lot of combat, and I could pick a lot of examples, but I'm going to pick the one that you and I have in common, the Battle of Ramadi. And it seems to be the most appropriate. So COVID-19, like anything, is a challenge. When a challenge like that comes our way, it's a challenge, but it's also an opportunity, right? We can gain from it. We can gain things like humility. We can gain compassion for others, and we can increase our self-confidence as we adapt and overcome that challenge. So, a couple of examples that I look to, we could talk about, for instance, the guy who came in towards the end of our time in Ramadi, named David Petraeus. And he said something I thought was very good, which is, things were bad when he got there in early 2007. But as he said at the time, hard is not hopeless. And I thought it was a great quote. And how did he know that hard wasn't hopeless? Well, he himself had been through some hard times. He, as a battalion commander, a lieutenant colonel, on a live fire range, one of his soldiers accidentally shot him in the chest. And within a matter of days, he was back leading his soldiers in training. The people at the hospital were amazed that after 3 days he was ready to be released. He proved that he was ready to go by knocking out 50 push-ups without a break, without a rest, just 3 days after being shot. Now, wow. It wasn't in the heart, it was in his right lung. But still an impressive achievement. As fortune would have it, his operating surgeon was a guy named Dr. Bill Frist, who went on to become a U.S. Senator and was on the Senate Armed Service Committee when he went to testify on progress in the War of Iraq.
Mm.
It's a small world. But he didn't give up. And then less than 10 years later, he had another major setback when he was skydiving. He fractured his pelvis. And he overcame that too and became a marathon runner. So everybody who's ever worked for General Petraeus knows that one of the things he likes to do is take you out on a run and run you until you're exhausted as part of your interview process. Fortunately for me, when I worked for him, we were in Iraq and we couldn't really go for a long run safely, so I didn't have to go through that experience. But he learned from those difficult times that hard is not hopeless. My inspiration, though, at the time in Ramadi and throughout the latter stages of my career was Ulysses S. Grant. Behind me, there's probably half a dozen books about General Grant and President Grant. And the thing that I appreciated about him is he had humility, he had compassion, and over time he developed a sense of self-confidence and grit, determination that was the critical factor in winning the Civil War. He, as a young officer, missed his wife desperately when he was out in the Northwest frontier in the old Frontier Army and began drinking, and eventually that destroyed his career and he had to leave under a cloud and he came back home to the Midwest, and he did not succeed at anything he tried as a civilian. Every business he touched failed. He even didn't work out working as a clerk in his father's store, and ended up selling firewood on a street corner just to feed his family. Wow. Everybody thinks of the general, the president, but they don't think of what a difficult time he went through. And when the war broke out, he offered his services and very quickly climbed through the ranks because people saw that this guy doesn't quit when things aren't going his way. In one of his earliest battles, he was terrified as he led a regiment of soldiers, some several hundred soldiers, over a hill towards where he thought the Confederates were. And when he got over the top of the hill, he looked down and he saw the enemy had abandoned their fortifications and basically run away. And he learned something from that. He learned that, sometimes or quite often, the enemy's just as afraid of you as you are of the enemy. And so that got him thinking about, well, instead of worrying about what the enemy's going to do to me, maybe I should be thinking about what I'm going to do to the enemy. And in this case, our enemy is COVID-19. Back to that in a minute. So when a couple of years later, or about a year later, he found himself in command of all of the American forces at a place called Shiloh. Shiloh turned out to be the bloodiest battle in American history up to that point. And what happened was the Confederates surprised the Union Army while they were making breakfast and still asleep in their tents. The Confederates came out of the woods and swept through them. And the Union forces were able to rally somewhat, avoid total destruction, but they knew that they'd been whipped and were expecting to be evacuated. Well, General Grant wasn't even there. He was away from his forces, and he rejoined them towards the latter stage of the battle and found a field hospital where his wounded were being tended. And people don't all know this, but Grant was very squeamish, could not stand the sight of blood, and kind of moved away from that. And of course, as usually happens when things are going bad, it began to rain. So he was sitting under a tree in the dark, in the rain, trying to stay out of the rain, and was calmly smoking a cigar, thinking about what he was going to do next. And his friend General Sherman walks up to him and says, "Well, Grant, we've had the devil's own day today, haven't we?" And Grant looked at him and said very calmly in reply, "Yep, lick them tomorrow, though." And the next day, Grant's army counterattacked and ended up winning the battle. Lick them tomorrow, though, is a great way to think of things when things are not going your way.
Yeah.
Things are not going our way today, but we're going to lick them tomorrow. Tomorrow's another day, and we're going to take this in stride, learn from it, and get better. So as a brigade commander, we started out in a place called Tal Afar in the northwest part of Iraq, and then I got orders to move my brigade down to Ramadi. Ramadi at the time was the most dangerous part of Iraq. Mark and SEAL Team 3, Task Unit Bruiser, were already there, and we joined them, and there was an Army brigade there with them, and the commander of that brigade said, well, we lost almost 100 soldiers here, and the brigade before us lost almost 100 soldiers. You're probably going to lose 100 soldiers while you're here. As we were moving in, there was a plan to do a major operation to try to take Ramadi back. And my brigade, the outgoing brigade, and another brigade was going to join us. It was going to be a 3-brigade size operation. And we were going to fight our way back into the city because the enemy held the city. We were basically on the outskirts. And at that point, the strategy sort of changed a little bit, and the decision was made, no, we're not going to try to take the city back with 3 brigades. We're just going to let, your brigade go down there and relieve the brigade that's heading home. And the strategy at this point was, as the Iraqi security forces stand up, the American forces, the coalition forces will stand down. We're going to pull out of the cities, let the Iraqi security forces take the fight to the enemy. Well, the problem was the Iraqi security forces were still in their infancy. They were going through their own sort of Valley Forge moment, and they were not ready to go into the city where really all the fighting was in Iraq, or most of it, and take the offensive. It had to be done together. So I basically ignored that strategy and decided that we were going to fight our way into the city. And we were going to leave the Iraqi security forces in there before we pulled out. And about that time, a memorandum had been leaked to the media. Our higher headquarters intelligence chief, a Marine colonel, very good man, had written that he thought that the entire province of Anbar was a lost cause. And, really the best thing to do would be to cut our losses and go home. That was kind of tough, because how do you tell your troops that about 100 of you are going to die, several hundred more are going to be wounded, and it really won't matter because we're going home, right? I mean, that I couldn't accept that. When my brigade deputy commander said, "So, sir, what do you want to do? What's your strategy here?" I said, "Well, we've got to." I said, "Well, look, Jim, it can't be anything less than peace and prosperity in Ramadi. What else are we here for?" So we're going to figure out what to do with the 1 brigade that we have, and we're going to take the fight to the enemy. If we're going to lose 100 soldiers just sitting around trying to isolate the city, kind of create sort of you remember the movie Escape from New York, where they just built a wall around New York City?
Right.
Well, that was kind of the plan. That was what our predecessors were doing. They were just trying to build a wall around the city of Ramadi. I said, we're going to go into the city and we're going to take it back from Al-Qaeda, which had recently changed its name from Al-Qaeda in Iraq to the Islamic State in Iraq. And they declared Ramadi as the capital of its new caliphate if this starts to sound familiar to you, it was sort of a dress rehearsal for ISIS in a lot of ways. So we had to adapt, and the way we ended up adapting was we weren't going to get more brigades, so we ended up working with the local sheikhs, and that led to what they called the awakening. And the awakening was in an important way a key to the ultimate success in our campaign against the enemy in Iraq. And General Allen in Anbar province and General Petraeus in Baghdad spread that awakening that began in Ramadi with us across the whole country, and they became the Sons of Iraq, and the rest, as they say, is history. But, you know, we suffered heavy losses. We lost Mark in early August, but that was really the beginning. It got worse from there. And one day in December, we lost 6 soldiers and Marines, and another one died of wounds back in the States, so 7 in one day. And it would have been easy just to sit down under a tree in the rain and feel sorry for ourselves, but we didn't. We decided that we were going to lick them tomorrow. And we did, with the help of the sheikhs. We fought our way back into the city with the Sunni tribes helping us. And we took Ramadi and we turned it from the most dangerous city in Iraq to the safest city in Iraq. And I wish Mark could have been there with me when just a few short months later, they had a 10K run down the same cities and streets of Ramadi where we had been dodging RPGs and IEDs not so long ago.
Every day you went down that street, there were
Yes.
IEDs and RPGs.
Absolutely, absolutely. And the only shot fired that day was the starter pistol. And so we were forced to adapt, forced to overcome these circumstances. We confronted the challenge, but we couldn't confront it head on. We had to find a way around. We had to be clever, right? And that's sort of what we all need to do when we're faced with challenges like COVID-19. You know, we have to ask ourselves, well, what's our mission? Okay, our mission is to survive and to help as many other people to survive as possible. Well, how can I do that? I'm not a doctor. I'm not a healthcare professional. Well, we can take care of ourselves. We can take care of our family. We can help to take care of others. We can reach out. We can do charity work if possible, if we can afford it. If we can't, well, charity begins at home, and we can use this opportunity maybe to strengthen our family relationships, our relationships with our friends. Thank goodness that we have things like information technology that allow us to communicate with one another even when we're isolated. We can begin to think differently, try to think outside of the box, try to improve ourselves. You you never forget how to ride a bike, but I'm living proof that you do forget how to play the piano. I used to be able to play it, and I'm trying to get back into that. I'm stuck at home, working from the office that I'm in right now, not my office at work. But you do what you can, like you figure out what you can accomplish, and then what does that lead to? Well, down the road when you need it, it leads to a little more grit, a little more determination. You know that if I take the initiative, if I try to shape this challenge instead of allow the challenge to shape me, I'll be a better person at the end. I'll have that reservoir to tap into when I need it, just like Ulysses S. Grant, just like Petraeus did. And I certainly had my own setbacks prior to being the commander in Ramadi. my rise from second lieutenant to 3-star general was not a smooth, unbroken series of successes. I had a number of ups and downs. I got off to a pretty rocky start. I had more letters of reprimand than medals, early in my career. But eventually, I put all that to good use. So I would encourage everybody out there to do what Grant did when he had a bad day and he had a setback. Was he would generally assess the situation while he was tending to his wounded and and then he would find an open flank, and then he would move toward that flank until he was stopped, and then he would look for another one. And that's what I would say to all of us is look for a new flank when we hit an obstacle. We lose a job, we lose a loved one, we lose something important in our lives. Find a way around. Keep going. Make it matter. Make it worthwhile. I had to do that. That was my mission, is to make it matter to all the mothers, fathers, wives, daughters, and sons who lost loved ones in Ramadi. I had to make it matter for them. That was my mission, and I couldn't accept anything less than success. And that's how we all have to look at this virus that originated in Wuhan, China, not maliciously probably, but still, we find ourselves confronting an unsuspected or unexpected challenge. We can't let it define us. We have to define it. We have to make it matter because of what we've had to give up.
Yeah. So good. There's so much that you went through that is so impactful. It's funny because we sent you an outline, just a general outline, but you didn't see the other questions that I was going to ask you. And you basically answered every one of those other questions that I was going to ask you. So very thorough. I love what you said. Don't let this shape you. You take control of that. And lots of times we don't feel that with our feelings. We feel overwhelmed. We're fearful. It's crisis. It's the unknown. We don't know. Are we going to be back to work on Monday? Or is it going to be a week? Is it going to be a month? And so we have to take those controls, not with our feelings, but with our will, that we choose to say, this is not going to define me. This is not going to define my family. And that's part of that same on me philosophy. Is like, we said, okay, we're going to step out. We're going to go forward. You guys follow us, and that the encouragement that they got from you today, hopefully they will as well say, okay, now it's my turn. I'm going to step out. I'm going to lead myself. I'm going to make these decisions. I'm going to change the negativity of my thinking. I'm going to make sure that I'm sleeping well, that I'm eating right, not doing junk food, that I'm exercising, that I'm taking care of those things that I can control. I'm going to control those, and I'm going to move forward, in the battlefield march to say, let's go, on me. And then that they'll be contagious, and then they'll pass that on to others. I was
just going to say that you can't do that if you're not taking care of yourself.
Yes.
Grant didn't take very good care of himself. He drank and he smoked, but maybe that's a part of Grant that would not be a good example for all of us. But one of the guy I replaced in Afghanistan when I was a 2-star said, try to follow the 7, 3, and 2 rule. Try to get 7 hours sleep, 3 meals a day, and a couple hours of exercise. Well, I couldn't get a couple hours of exercise. I was working 16 hours a day, but but it was a worthy goal to try to work out as many days a week as I could for as long as I could, and eat as regularly as possible and sleep. Vince Lombardi said, fatigue makes cowards of us all. If we're not getting enough sleep, everything looks worse when you're tired. It's really hard to see a way forward or around a problem when your mind isn't working correctly. So you have to get that sleep. I've always been a big believer in that. I always tell guys, who've been to Ranger School, what'd you learn in Ranger School? Well, how far I can go, how hard I can work without sleep. I said, okay, great. Now forget that lesson, because you need to understand how important sleep is.
Yes.
Especially for leaders, because
Yes.
other people's lives depend on your judgment.
Yes, yeah, that's so crucial. And, part of the different types of sleep, whether it's our REM sleep or our deep sleep, the deep sleep is designed to restore our physical bodies. That REM sleep is designed to restore our mental bodies. So we've got to have good sleep. And that's so crucial. I'm like you, General. Man, I protect my sleep at all costs because I've learned I do not do well when I don't get good sleep. I travel a lot typically when it's not COVID-19. And so I've got to protect that, or I end up getting sick and I'm no good to anybody else, when I'm sick. So such wise advice to be able to protect that. And thank you again. You did complete your mission. You have proved yourself and been there. Not that you had to prove anything, but like you said, your mission of being there for the fallen, you've been successful in that mission with me. And I will forever be grateful for that. But
Thanks, David.
so thank you very much. I know that we've got several questions. I don't watch the chat room real closely because then I get distracted and not focused on what I'm supposed to be doing here. So Ryan has jumped on with us. Ryan has just been such a blessing and such a gift to this project. And it was a team effort. Without Ryan, this wouldn't have happened. There were some thoughts and ideas I had, but he got a hold of me. He's one of our volunteers, and it was the little kick in the rear that I needed from God to say, okay, here's the next mission that I have for you. Yes, it's out of your comfort zone, but this is what I want you to do. And if I've learned anything, I was a rebel in my 20s, and when God asked me to do something, it may not make any sense, but I'll say, okay. And so Ryan has been awesome walking alongside with me to be able to make this happen. And I know he's been watching the chat room. So Ryan, what questions do you have for General MacFarland today?
Yeah, that's right, Debbie. I'm glad that you turned that over to me. You're doing a great job, and these guests have been amazing. General, pleasure to meet you, sir. And
Thank you. Thanks, Ryan, for what you do.
Yeah, thanks for joining us. This is incredible. The amount of people and the outreach that we've already had, and Debbie and I not being super IT or social media people, we didn't promote it super broadly, but it's been amazing to watch the servicemen and women join. I think, Debbie, we've looked at 500 plus that are now registered just for this webinar that are men and women of the military, which is great. And then so many more that are following on Facebook, which is pretty awesome too. So it's been an amazing journey so far. So let's get into the Q&A. Let's see, General, what the significance of the two swords are in the back of your room. What's funny when we're doing these little podcast interviews is now everybody gets to see what's in your office and what's around the room. So somebody's asking about the two swords in the back of your room, and could you recommend a book to help out a non-military individual to help better their lives? What book would that be?
Okay.
So two.
So the two swords, actually, they're sabers. One is actually my grandfather's West Point cadet saber. I wasn't the first pointer in our family. And the other is one of my sabers from one of my assignments. I'm a cavalry guy, and I was in the 1st Squadron, 4th Cavalry in Germany, and 1-4 Cav, called them the Quarter Horse, and I was the second in command of the executive officer. So that was my going away gift, is that saber. So those are the two sabers. A book I would recommend. There's so many. I have a whole list that I give to future leaders, in not just in the Army, but now where I work in General Atomics. But one of the ones that I like to recommend to people is Grant's memoirs, because it's sort of it's sort of a journey. And the great thing about his memoirs, he wrote them himself, and he wrote them while he was dying of throat cancer. to provide for his family. They were, and a friend, Mark Twain, said, "Hey, look, I'll publish." By the way, Mark Twain was a Confederate sympathizer, but he told Grant, he said, "I will find a publisher for your memoirs if you write them," because he'd been fleeced in a business deal after he gave up the presidency. Because he was a very trusting guy. He trusted other people to do the right thing. So he lost everything. And the only way he figured he could make money was to write his memoirs, which he did. And he completed them while he could barely eat, speak, or drink, sitting on the front porch of a cabin in upstate New York in Saratoga. They're one of the greatest personal sets of memoirs. I don't generally like autobiographies or recommend them to a lot of people. This is one I recommend because he's very honest about his own failings and how he learned from them. So,
Wow.
give it one. I saw a couple people ask if I would post my complete list. I would be happy to do that. I'll send them to you guys. One of the things I break it out in, how to become a leader, how to be a leader, and how to stay a leader. Because a lot of times people get to the top and lose perspective and slide back down to the bottom. So I'll be sure to send those along.
Yeah. I'm a little partial to the 1st to the 4th Cav. The first time that I went to Iraq, I was embedded with the 1st to the 4th Cav. So that always holds a special place in my heart.
Yep, absolutely. Mine too.
There you go. General, we have a lot of folks right now considering transition. Some people already in transition. It's kind of been a topic that's come up through several of our guest, podcasts, right, Debbie? We've had several people discussing transition. So we had a question come in, and what suggestions you would have for somebody going through a transition, maybe somebody still experiencing transition, and encouragement and direction maybe for somebody.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, transition is another one of these challenges. It's almost a battle, right? That you have to take, like any other fight that you've been in. It's a mission, right? You've got to figure out kind of where you want to be at the end of that operation. And you have to decide, what's the most important thing to you? Is it the location? Is it the salary? Is it the type of work? What's most important? And you have to set priorities. And then, once you do that, then it becomes a little bit easier for you to decide how you want to pursue those. You have to make sure you have the right training and education. You have to be realistic. And I always encourage people to reach out to others to kind of give them some additional input on what they're good at and what they might be best at doing, and not just go by, hey, I always wanted to be, a professional baseball player. Well, you're 40 years old. You're not going to be a professional baseball player. What else do you think you can do? Start working with some other people and start roughing out those things. You're not going to get all three things unless you're an incredibly lucky person, the location, the salary, and the type of occupation, okay. You're going to have to settle. It's kind of like in business, the three things you go with is faster, cheaper, and better, quality, speed, and price, right? Well, that triangle, you have to sacrifice one to get the other two. You can only get 2 out of 3 things. You can't be faster, cheaper, and better. You can't be better, cheaper, and faster. You can't, something's got to give, right? So if you're just one of those incredibly lucky people, you're going to have to give up something. And accept that, because in war, one of the principles of war is mass, and another one is economy of force. They're 2 sides of the same coin. You can't be strong everywhere. You got to focus on some things, prioritize, and accept a little bit of risk Ramadi, we had to accept risk. We couldn't be strong everywhere. So I had to tell one of my battalion commanders, I'm sorry, Tony, you're the economy of force effort. I'm taking one of your companies away from you. You're going to have to get by with fewer soldiers than everybody else. And, you know, he took some heavy losses trying to keep a lid on things. But you know what that forced him to do? He's the first guy who started working with the local tribes to offset the loss of those that combat power. Necessity is the mother of invention. If you're willing to look around and be open to new possibilities. So I tell people who are in transition, be open to new possibilities. Look around. Don't be dead set on the one thing that you want to do or try to have it all. Be willing to compromise.
Yeah, it's a tough place to go. A lot of humility in that as well too. It's almost a restarting at the bottom and kind of working your way back through a system, which is really one of my biggest challenges as a professional athlete when I transitioned. And I found a lot of similarities with military, which has really been a cool experience. So Debbie, that's about it, I believe. So I'll let you take over.
Awesome. Well,
General, pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, I'll send you the list of recommended reading.
Yeah, what I'll do.
You don't have to read it all, you know. I mean, pick your.
But why not, right? You learn from all of them.
Maybe,
and folks,
yeah.
if you'll send that to me, General, we'll post that on our America's Mighty Warriors Facebook page for everyone to be able to see there. But one of the things that we like to do with each one of our guests is give you the opportunity, if there's a way that we can support you, if there's something that you're working on, or a book or a project or an organization that you'd like us to support for you.
Well, the organization I'm supporting most is America's Mighty Warriors. So anything anybody can do to help out Debbie Lee, I would very much appreciate it. She does a wonderful thing for our service members, their families, and you know, I think that it's terrific. So, you know, anything you can spare for Debbie, you're helping us all.
Well, thank you, sir. I appreciate that. And did you have a challenge? Lord knows in the military, we like to have a good challenge. Do you have a challenge that you want to throw out to people?
Oh, yeah. So here's one. Maybe Ryan, as an athlete, will appreciate this. Try to come out of quarantine weighing no more and maybe a little less than you went into it.
Oh, I like that. That's a good one, because I think a lot of people have been struggling with there's too much time and they're eating a little more comfort food. And I know in the beginning I was experiencing that a little bit, so I had to, you know, compensate by walking a little bit more. So I did 45 miles.
It's easy to graze when you're at home, right?
Yes, yes, it is. I love that. That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, thank you so much again, General. We've been honored to have you on here today, and I'm sure our guests, our listeners have been just inspired, as I have been personally. And we just want to say thank you from the bottom of our hearts.
Oh, thanks. The honor's been all mine. Thanks, Debbie.
And folks,
everybody, take care of yourself. Stay healthy. Godspeed.
And folks, we're here for 13 more days. We've got 13 more amazing speakers to give you some hope, give you some leadership, be with you. And as General MacFarland said, if you can help, we want to be sensitive. We know so many people don't have the finances during this time to be able to, but if you're one of those that you haven't been impacted financially by coronavirus and you can help us at America's Mighty Warriors, you can make us a force multiplier to continue our mission to support our veterans who have given so much for our freedom. So please, if you can, make a donation, check out our store. We've got lots of amazing merchandise. There are lots of great leadership books in there as well. All of the books that we have, Tell Mark's Story, are dedicated to Mark, or I'm a contributing author in, that have some of those great principles in there as well. And then we always are looking for people to serve and help us as volunteers. And I know we've talked about that in the midst of the struggles, that serving is one of those things that helps you process through that. And I can't encourage you enough, even if it's not America's Mighty Warriors, get out there and serve somebody. Do something today for for somebody else. Thank you so much. God bless you, and we'll see you back tomorrow.
When fear flashes its teeth like a lion, when evil roars and walls begin to shake, there's a strength that's not my own. There's a fire in my bones. He is with me and his hand is ever on me. Follow on me. We're marching out into the night. Follow on me. We're standing up against a giant. Follow on me. We might be walking in the fire, but if it's where we're meant to be, then on me.